All right, we have a lot on our agenda because we have to get through the low-scale nodes tonight. So just looking ahead at our agenda, we have a few items here, action items. The first is the approval of the meeting notes from January 9th. I don't know if everybody got a chance to look at those. Okay, all in favor? All right. Okay. All right, one abstention. Tonight we're going to finish this mixed-use zoning code for the nodes. This is we have to get through this. There isn't the big lofty question sitting there still. Like, we got height. We agreed to disagree about parking. We have to get through setback, and then we have to finish the rest of the architectural detailing. So with that, I'm starting back on page 33 if you have your copy of the village. And we're looking at H, maximum building height at minimum building rear yard setback in residential zones. So there's been a lot of conversation about depth of parcel setbacks. Do we have graphics? Do we have a graphic for this or no? Yeah, what the setbacks look like at different heights or no? Okay.
Work out exactly what it would be, but I don't know that I want to just talk this out there.
Okay, so can we just zoom in on, let's zoom in on Harlem and Maine for a minute. I think the overall concept here is, 30 feet was a shallow village parcel. These are deeper parcels. I guess my question is, can we create an offset that's somewhere between 60 and 70 feet in this type of node?
What do you mean by an offset?
So rear yard minimum setback from the residential area.
Yeah, that's fine.
That's twice the building height, almost, right? It's 60. At 70, it's twice, or just about twice the maximum building height.
Yeah, but a parking structure couldn't be in that 70 feet.
Primary, yeah, structures.
Okay. Yeah, I walked the area, sort of measured out different distances, so that would be fine.
So, yeah, if you go to the Fruhoff Main Street building.
Yeah, that's where I walked.
Okay, let's go there. Is there, so you're looking at, each one of those parking stalls is 10, roughly? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Are we comfortable at that position? Well, 60's not quite, 70 would be closer, so that's where are we in that range of 60 to 70? 70's just about.
60 to 70.
Okay, well, we're going to have to pick a number.
A little closer to 70, that's the thing. 60.
I would vote.
Oh, go ahead.
Am I on? No. I got this one on.
Here. All right, you gotta hit both buttons.
If I had to weigh in, I would go for 70. I think that this is the most restrictive. We have to be the most careful on this, on the lowest scale node, and I would lean towards the more conservative number.
Can we just scroll through that node, both sides of the street? And we've got a lot of depth on a lot of those parcels. Yeah, the Ziggy's building. So go into Chasen, and you're looking at 20, 40, 60, 70, it's current building footprint, right? Just about.
I think most of them are more than 70, or 70 or more now, so I think that would work.
Maybe he's gonna make it
So,
at 60, it wouldn't make it. We're talking setback from a residential district.
from a residential district.
From a residential house.
Right, from a residential district.
A lot of these residents are zoned commercial.
Right. No, yeah, so you can only measure off a residential district. If we can get through this one tonight, we're gonna be in pretty good shape, so. But this is the big question. If we, my suggestion is that at 2.5 stories, then you wouldn't need to do the rear lot transition, right? Because you'd come up 2 stories and then have to pitch the roof. So what we see over at figure 55 wouldn't necessarily matter in this district, which would then drop I.
Yes.
Okay. So, I mean, I guess what I'd say is, what we're gonna do is we're handing this off to the consultant to drop them in, see what our things look like. Can we just agree to put it in there as most restrictive at 70 and then figure out where we actually have an issue? So if we have a problem with an existing building becoming non-compliant and it's a building we like, then maybe we have to change it to 60.
I think when you start looking at where all the nodes are,
Okay.
the one where it happens to be looking at right now, it probably has the deepest lots in the phone.
The one in Snyder has the deepest lots.
Can't we,
Start looking adjacent to the village, Eggert and Harlem, Eggert and Bailey, those lots are not really deep.
so can't we designate, I mean, do they all have to be the same?
Well, we're only creating 4 districts.
Yeah, I know, but can't we carve out some differences?
Don't we have so I don't remember offhand at the moment, do we have we're still going low scale and, this isn't the current map though, is that it?
Yeah, there's low and medium.
So the low scale node would be a 70-foot setback, right? But then the medium scale nodes of like of the stuff up near Williamsville or the stuff back off of Eggert and Bailey, those areas could change. Well, but if you look at it, right, so on the map, if you looked at like 40 and 38, that might be a different issue. If you look at 16, that's a different issue. If you look at 34 and 33, maybe 70 feet makes sense. So your traditional low scale, are we?
That's residential district. You gotta go to the red line.
The red line. It would allow somebody to build a building back to that green flag, and then build vertically. That's 2.5 stories, yeah. Can you measure the other parcel, the other side of that parcel, the 45, 64? No, yeah.
Timothy Bank,
Yeah.
roughly where the building stops now,
Yeah,
on the adjacent portion.
well, where the furthest that building.
So I guess I would say that in the traditional low-scale nodes, you know, we could be more restrictive with this thing. When we get into the traditional medium-scale nodes, if you look at, can you go to the Tops Plaza in Williamsville? Here, let's see.
Residential district.
Yeah, there's no residential district next to it. Right, okay. So it's a non, what?
So, down in Lafayette, Maine, a little further west on the south side of
That's 39, so it's still a corridor, right?
well, the south side's a corridor?
Yeah.
The south side is so close to
Yeah, so that area there's a corridor, so that's a different treatment. Okay.
What about Bailey and Eggert?
Okay, go to Bailey and Eggert. Bailey and Eggert's gonna be a problem, that parcel's pretty tight.
Only 130 feet.
But that again falls into this traditional medium scale node. So if we limit MFR 7, set MFR 7.
south side of Eggers,
Which one?
south side of Eggers. That core, the traditional core.
Until you get to 16, right?
I'm looking at 16 right now. 16 is, that's the nursing facility.
Right, so the problem there is, that we have a pre-existing non-conforming, right, if we do this at the nursing home? Because it's tight, right now, the building's tight to the lot.
No, it's residential zone.
MFR 7.
So it's gonna be, depends what allowable uses we have under this.
Well, the way I read the map here, we're talking about the change in 16, so, okay. So I really, I guess I think that this could work at double, and unless anybody really objects to it, we could just lock it in and move on. See it in a proposal back.
At 70?
At 70.
All right.
All right, next, I goes away, right? Because we're not gonna have building, I mean, we're gonna go up to 35, but you're into a pitch roof, or 36, but you're into a pitch roof. Then, building J, for buildings with multiple storefronts, there shall be a direct correlation between the delineations of the interior tenant spaces and exterior facade treatments. So,
Do you have all the buttons on? Because when you sent it back, you had it on mute and then power. This is not.
that one's a different animal.
Yes, all right, send that one on.
So 36 is the mean height or the literal height of the peak of the roof?
36 is to the midpoint of the ridge of the roof pitch. Otherwise, it's not 2.5 stories, so you're capping it at 2.
Okay,
In
so
order to
so then the literal height would be higher, just to help me understand.
Somebody could continue the pitch up to 36 feet. 36 is to the midpoint of the ridge of the roof pitch. Otherwise, it's not 2.5 stories, so you're capping it at 2. In order to get,
Okay, so then the literal height would be higher, just to help me understand. Somebody could continue the pitch up to
Well, it depends on the pitch, whatever your pitch is. I don't know what you know what I mean, pitch of the roof, depending on the vertical run of or the actual angle of the pitch or the inclination of the pitch.
Right, and that would affect the usability of that floor anyway, correct?
Right,
So
'cause
it's in their best interest to keep the pitch lower for usability on the half floor?
That's the idea, because you split it wider.
Okay, thank you.
So this thing with the floor plate splitting with the storefronts was an outcome in Williamsville of like the Bond store, which used to be multiple storefronts all connected internally, or the Jacqueline shop where it actually straddled two buildings. And there was a way of trying to delineate, saying we don't want the interconnectivity of store to, like, we want you to have, stores identifiable store and stop taking space behind other buildings, others. This may or may not apply in this district. I don't know that it really pertains. This was a symptom of some old Williamsville issues that we were trying to clean up. So, I don't know if we have to keep it.
I've been in places like up in Freeport and stuff like that, where literally we have two different buildings on the outside. Two of the tenants of the same
This is like Vidler's, right? Vidler's spans like 3 different buildings. So we don't care about that. No? Okay. All right, moving on. Page 34, commercial building character. Commercial buildings must allow for the mixing of uses in upper stories. And, okay, so, great. New construction, building renovations, and building additions shall complement the traditional architecture of Western New York State. The prevailing village character in New York State is that sort of classical treatment. In this case, I'm not sure it applies because Tudor style isn't, and so there may be some areas where we would want it to look like traditional New York State architecture, and other places we may say, hey, we're looking for whatever, 18th century English. So I'm thinking that we drop A.
Yeah, because the other place that may apply with the architecture styles we have within the town would be up in Swarmville.
Or adjacent to the village. But either way, it's a pretty subjective.
When we fixed this one, it needed a new battery.
That's fine. I'm gonna try to wear mine out. It's a pretty subjective standard here, so. Buildings shall have a solid to void ratio created by window openings and wall surfaces that is consistent with valued historic forms found, and I'll have to change that. Similar or complementary ratio shall be provided or maintained to existing structures upon renovations. So we're going to want to dictate transparencies, right? This will actually come up a little bit later in terms of ground floor transparency. This is getting after more of the repetition of windows, so I don't want a blank face, nor do I want a big ribbon window on the second floor. And it's more a guide for an architecture review board. Okay. So let's talk about the ratio. If we change this to traditional town, any issues with leaving that sort of guide for architecture review?
Don't want to specify anything.
No, not until we get to the ground floor. Again, it's a guide for somebody to say, you've got a ribbon window on your second floor, that's not what we're looking for.
The difficulty I'm having with that is different parts of the town, for example, Bailey, down in Harlem, because it's a completely different style of architecture in all those
Right.
different locations. And how to word that, within a quarter mile or something of the subject location or something like that.
I like that, actually. So if you think about it, if you look at the two images that are marked as appropriate below, right, talk about transparency. Now this is going to talk about solid void ratio. In the village case, we said both of these were fine. The figure on figure 58, you know, that's actually similar to, the transparency ratio of like, Eggertsville Fire Company over at Eggert and Bailey. And that would fit sort of that Eggert-Bailey area, but it wouldn't fit in Snyder, right? Because the windows on the top are spaced
Too big.
incorrectly. Right, too big. And then the figure on the right, those windows spacing, that would fit, you know, near the village for sure,
It'd fit in Snyder.
and it would probably fit in Snyder. So I think that as we get here, we could offer some guidance to the quarter mile that you're talking about. That would
was
make
the number I'm throwing out there. It's
Yeah.
1,250 feet roughly or something, 1,000 feet.
Anybody have a issue with us using a quarter mile as a guide? So- Yeah. Yep.
I would find a number, I would put it quarter.
1,200 feet, 1,000 feet. Well, that's the problem I'm having when you look at the Bailey corridor where it's nothing but small windows and giant wall areas, which I absolutely hate.
I would agree, I wouldn't anchor it to what we have. This is supposed to be a projection of what we want in the future, and if we...
Well, we're calling out valued historic forms, so you can disregard crap, basically, is what we're telling the...
And we don't have too many historic buildings.
I can't, I wanna...
But even so, some historic buildings are antiquated, so I'm not sure that that's actually the...
So then the thing we need to do here, right, is if we're talking to an architecture review board, we have to give them some guidance that allows them to say something's wrong with your window spacing. So if you look at like that neo-Gothic, you know, former town hall, village hall, in that image behind you, behind some of you, in front of others of us, right? That, you would have a hard time placing that in Williamsville today because we don't have a lot of neo-Gothic left. So the question is, do we still want to allow that or not? That type of idea, right?
Well, the architectural form itself, probably not, but some of the features of it, such as the window size and spacing, probably do.
Okay.
Then it wouldn't be okay to kind of set aside a percentage of the facade, certain other percentages.
The problem is it'll change in different areas, right? So different nodes are gonna have a different anticipated level of transparency.
And these are gonna be used as guides for the architectural peoples.
Right, so architectural peoples need to be able to know that they can comment on the window spacing, for instance.
These are not fixed in stone. But I know the current code actually requires a minimum of 25%, minimum 25% transparency on all new commercial construction.
Why don't we throw this one back in the consultant's lap and say, tell us what you think we could use as a guide to...
Well, I think we could set a minimum.
Okay, so let me ask the general question here to keep this conversation moving. Is there any objections to us trying to work our way through providing an open void ratio for buildings?
No. I would recommend as part of the zoning ordinance, we set a minimum.
25% minimum, but that the spacing could
Be modified or required to be increased.
Well, maybe that's the thing. Maybe you set a 25% minimum upper floors as per current zoning, and then you allow the architecture review board to grant variation.
To look around and say, okay, it needs to be more.
Or guidance, right, the
Yeah.
language would say required architectural review, something like, it's contingent on their review, they have to weigh in some form or another.
That's good, okay. So 25% minimum, and required architecture review.
That's for any use, that's for any storage.
Upper stories.
That's upper.
Yeah.
I don't know this, when I observe the code dictates,
Just to to placement of windows and certain wall types near certain uses is gonna always be an issue.
You know, bedrooms, things like that. You have to have
Egress, yeah.
a light.
Within that column, for the dwelling unit,
Yeah.
your window size is
Big. Yeah, it'll be determined.
the sleeping area, the bedroom, yeah. So if there's non-residential.
So we're gonna get to lower in a few minutes. Lower's gonna be higher threshold, so. All right.
And they can't say we have 25% on the first floor. It's completely separate. They can't use we're giving you this down here,
No,
so.
upper story.
It's completely divorced.
Yeah, there's different. Yeah, 'cause
Which includes, right, if you have that half story and you're using it as a full-service story, you still need to provide a void ratio.
Okay,
So it means you
the
got dormers.
consultant when we first started looking at this, the TLSNs, was recommending ground story of residential 20% minimum facing a public street, and non-residential ground floor 50% minimum transparency.
50% sounds about right for ground floor. We
Yeah.
can put that right here.
The upper story was 20% minimum,
20%?
yeah, so,
The building on the left there looks like it's probably about 20% minimum, figure 56.
that's probably over 20.
No. You think that's over 20% void?
It's close.
Upper? No, it's gotta be 20.
Well, if we like the 25, why don't we
Over time.
just change the top to 25?
Well, why don't we leave it at 25 and then we'll actually put 50% ground floor transparency? Again, what's gonna happen here is they're gonna feed this back in a code and it's gonna show, so we just are trying to hit them, do we agree with the 25 and 50? So instead of 20, we wanna see 25, if we wanna see 50, that's consistent, great. Okay. All right, 25 and 50. All new or renovated commercial buildings with frontage on public streets shall provide areas of transparent glazing. See, okay, here we go. I knew we were gonna get to it. So Williamsville, we said 70% on the ground floor. And then we told them it has to occur between 3 and 10 feet. So that's trying to say we don't want your glass dropping to the ground and then stopping shy of 10 feet. You need to carry your transparency all the way up to 10 feet. And then we went 70% ground floor transparency.
Oh, even at 50%, you're looking at a building height of, floor to ceiling.
A 15.
Well, that would be, that would probably work.
I think the height works. I think the issue becomes the percentage of transparency on the ground floor. I just 50%'s not a real big storefront, walkable storefront to me. It's still.
Well, if you look at this is probably about 50 and 56.
No, that's gotta be more. You can include the door, right, so.
Well, including the area above it, is that that's all solid wall.
Above?
Yeah.
Yeah, but we're saying, so the transparent glazing equal to or greater than 70% of the wall area between the height of 3 feet and 10 feet. So within the 3-foot and 10-foot zone, we want that to be a higher percentage. After that, we don't care if you go solid above. And it does specifically stipulate that tinted glazing can't reduce the transparency in the first floor, shall not count towards minimum transparency. So I know the consultants got some good language regarding glazings from, was it Missoula?
Yeah, tinted is, there's all levels of tinted.
Well, the big question for us is whether 50% is enough. So, or if it should be higher. And that, again, if you're talking between 3 and 10 feet, that's the target area. So you're 3 foot off the ground to start your storefront assembly, and then you end up at 10 feet, so that carries you 3 foot above your 7-foot door. So you get a transom glass. I gotta tell you, I like the 70 between 3 and 10.
Well, I'm looking at the diagram they gave us, and the 50% looks sign.
The other thing I'd want to...
Diagram you talking.
You guys...
I'm going back to the old one, page 5.
Page 5. Brian, you guys just talked about this earlier, I just want to make sure you're...
The definition of street, so this says, this refers to public streets. Is that both, like on a corner lot, is that both streets that they're?
Yeah, it'd be the cross streets.
Okay, so it's any street
You have to wrap the
frontage.
building, you can't just take the
Okay.
glazing across
And that's a
the...
little different too, because they were specifying primary and side streets. 70% on a side street,
Yeah, 'cause...
I'd be okay saying 70% on the main street and less percent on the side street. That would be okay with me.
Yeah, 'cause the back parts of these are gonna end up being the warehousing and
You allow for
kitchens
kitchen.
and...
so they were going 50 on the main street and 30 on the side street. So you wanted to crank the 50 to 70?
I'd like to crank the 50 to 70 and then go 30 on the side street would be fine, because you'd have to wrap the corner. I'm gonna, again, so if you look at, figure 56, right, that's a traditional storefront. It starts 3 feet up, it ends 3 feet above the door frame, and it carries all glass in that area.
The Karnowski building's probably close to that.
Close.
Lewin building's probably close to that, but you get over to the northeast corner of Main and Harlem, and that's substantially less than that. Which are the cutesy little...
Go to that boutique thing on the northwest corner. It's the northwest corner you're talking, right?
Yeah.
So,
Bank
can I ask,
management with that.
figure 56 looks like a retrofit, and, I personally think that bigger windows, more light is attractive. Boxing in all these windows is a dark storefront. So, is there an example of 70 that might, lend itself to what you're looking for?
Well, if you go to the next page, figure 65, that's probably about 70% in that range.
Which figure, Brian?
65, even 64, if you're looking at 64, would still make 70.
The one in the building on the east side,
Between 3 and 10 feet.
or left, right side.
Does,
The figure 65 could be more than 70%.
yeah.
It seems like you get to that solid door and then the wall, so this could be closer to 80. You know, the one on the left, that allows for, you know, even the thing on the far left of so you got 2 buildings put together there, both of those would look to qualify. I guess that's what I'm kind of after, is the face that looks like a 65, try to create that sort of open environment.
I don't have a problem with 70 if you've got multiple storefronts, such as in figure 65, if those are all individual storefronts, it would be difficult to get the returns inside the building without, you know, basically having a window running smack right up to a wall. Then you lose that transition from space to space.
I'd be more concerned with, if you flip the page over to, and see figure 67 on page 36, that to me is feeling more like 50% store, or fenestration. Now, that's a residential character, but now that spacing starts to suck for, you know, it's good for a doctor's office, not good for retail.
And this is future builds, not existing non-conforming, so I think that if we're trying to grow, we have to think, if we're doing bigger, we should be doing bigger windows too, I think. I would agree that 67 looks like a vacant doctor's office.
So like Logridge is definitely hitting 70.
But what about the other stores along there?
I think that those are, I'd be
That'd be
surprised if
close.
those aren't closer to 72.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at them, like, go turn around.
She's having problems.
If you look at that, right, the Main Street face of this, stop. You're looking at, you know, those are base spacings of at least 3 feet each, so you're 6 foot then you're going to like a 3 or 4 foot, return, then you're another 3-footed door, 2 feet. No, that's easily 70.
Yeah, I just wanna make sure you, like where the gutter's coming down,
Yeah.
the ability to put
so,
in some differentiation between space.
I wonder if we, so we're talking, now, maybe the better example, more contemporary building and/or something that's been renovated is Blum's or Iscalo's building down in the village, the new
Yes.
building. Take a look at that and see what kind of transparency he's got. I don't know if that's in accordance with this,
I just want to be able
right?
to see if there's multiple stores along a section. I don't want it to feel like it's all glass. I want to see something in between the stores.
So go to the main and Hirschfield building.
Why don't we just agree upon 60, right?
That's what I was just gonna suggest.
Go to main and Hirschfield.
The taco, whatever the taco thing is, Lloyd. Sorry. I'm a mighty taco guy, so.
So that made it at 70. Now, that's before Lloyd opened, because they still had the window cover on it. But this one made it at 70. And there's a lot of differentiation. There's 4 different venues there. 5, because Lloyd bought a double.
They're pretty consistent, like, the windows are pretty consistent in each section.
So I would say if you could do that at 70, that works. Well, there's proof that it works right there, right? Lloyd's kitchen actually is 4. Yeah. So, can I convince people to say 70? Can we do a show of hands at 70? Okay, we're going 70 on the main street, and I'll agree to 30 on the side so you can get a kitchen. All right, I'm gonna leave it up to.
In that
Yeah.
area, if the reference is figure 73, what is 63 trying to show?
There's no fenestration there at all. So,
63 is inappropriate.
okay, but you see in the parentheses, on page 60, on page 34,
Yeah.
figures 58, 63, 65, I couldn't figure out, what is 63?
So if you
Probably
read
nice.
if you read the caption on 63, it'll tell you the elimination of windows is not appropriate for adaptive reuse of existing structures.
Oh, that's what it's right.
I get it. We won't have that reference problem, so. All right, commercial buildings shall provide visual distinction between the first floor and the upper floors through the use of appropriate architectural elements, details, materials, or color. Okay, good. If anybody doesn't want that one, we're going outside.
What's the one off last wall?
The next one is, Scott, you're off the committee. Residential building character. So now, this is one of those things, right? Hypothetically, somebody could take one of these spaces and say, I'm just gonna put residence here. And if we're gonna put residence there, the question is, are you gonna try to hold them to the storefront issue? I personally would say that if I'm gonna be stuck with a building for the next 100 years, I want it to have the ground floor transparency requirements, because I don't want residential on the first floor, because I'm stuck with that forever, and I'm never gonna get, but I conceded on this one, so I may want to concede it.
Same point on that one. Here again, the consultant was recommending a minimum 25 before. My should the uses change as part of they would still have to come in for a permit to retrofit the building, which would then force them to be bringing into the...
Except that their ground floor would be the wrong height. So, if you said we're gonna keep the ground floor the same height, and then force the rest of the floors to be, then I'd be okay with it.
I know where you're going.
So, that was always the troubling part to me with the village code, was we had this issue of, you know...
The minimum floor height for residential on the ground floor is lower than it is on the commercial.
Right, so that doesn't allow the building to be retrofit for a commercial use.
Bottom line is you want to be able to reuse these buildings in that constraint.
It's a lot easier to take a commercial space and turn it into a residential space than it is to take the commercial space and make residential and make it commercial.
Drop a ceiling. So,
Yeah.
so we agree that the ground floor minimum height is still something we want to keep in all cases.
Yeah, I think we said that last time.
All right, I just want to make sure we're there before we move into this. Then it doesn't matter what the percentage of glazing on the face is, because you can always knock out
More
more wall to put in more glazing to convert it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, the standards set forth, blah, 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 in residential use buildings. Fire escapes shall be located in rear and side yards only. 2.5 stories, we're not gonna hit a lot of conditions where we're gonna need fire escapes. I'm not even sure that we really want fire escapes.
And anymore, I think there are usually actually towers built into the building because it's more cost effective to do that.
So,
Might just say we'll need building code if you want to reference.
yeah, so we could probably drop B entirely.
Yeah, I don't think you're gonna see people doing it, 'cause one, they're a maintenance nightmare.
Yep. The enclosure of existing front porches or other than through the use of transparent glazing is not permitted. Windows and door openings shall not be filled in such that resulting facade lacks a consistent solid void ratio. So, you know, basically, if you've got a front porch, we don't want a full, fledged walled condition. I don't know if this really applies to any of our nodes.
I don't know, but just reading it, I guess you couldn't screen the porch in either.
I don't know that this applies to our nodes, is what I guess I'm saying.
I haven't a clue.
I would just scratch it.
In the village, we have some existing residential stock that's been converted to commercial. So if you think about, places like, the photography place, or there's a store next to it, B Maternal used to be in there. Those places are what we were after here, so I think we'll just scratch C. Okay, D, new construction shall not create large undifferentiated walls with views to no windows or door openings facing a street, driveway, or parking area. So, if you're gonna put your bathrooms or laundry rooms against the front of the building, we don't wanna see undifferentiated spaces. Similarly, if you push them all to the back of the building where they look over to residential, we don't want a blank wall, right? Because the last thing I wanna do is stare at a brick wall out of the back of my house, so.
Figure 65, maybe figure 68.
Figure 65.
Yeah. Under 67 and before figure 9, so I'm assuming it's just...
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
So basically, right, so that's, or undifferentiated space, okay.
And that's something to go into the architectural review.
Yep. Principal and shared pedestrian entrances for ground floor residential units shall face the primary street and have a direct connection from the sidewalk. So, you're building residential units, you're not just putting an entryway off of your parking lot in the back, and, okay.
How did Iscalo pull that off?
Which building?
The one that made in Hurstville?
That's not, it's Bevilacqua.
Well, yeah, that's what I meant.
Because they can enter through, there's a primary entrance for the residential. But it's not residential only, this is residential character building.
Oh, okay.
So it's a mixed-use building,
Yeah, that's
but
all right.
you can enter the lobby, there's one spot where you can enter directly into the lobby off of the front.
Corner.
Okay, just trying to think here.
On the corner.
Yeah, so,
Almost.
on this side.
Okay, next.
so,
Which kind?
okay, so, individual resident units with principal entrances on the ground floor shall have front porches or entryways that are covered, elevated above grade, or otherwise distinguished to provide visual separation from the street. Yeah, I don't know if this matters.
I don't think it does. Even if you look at figure 67, I can see the entry thing, but I really don't see porches.
No, I agree. So we'll strike that. All right. 16G. We're saying that individual residential units with principal entrances at the ground level don't have to have front porches or entryways.
So, there's a function there, right?
Well, I guess if you look at,
A place to stand out of the weather or get up off the ground.
so if you look at that, that's technically an entryway. Dan's point. Well, but it says porches or entryways, so yes, Dan, you're right, F's gotta stay.
Oh, but we don't want it for porches, we just want it for entryway.
But if you wanna build a porch, okay,
Oh, it's the entryway.
you could
Okay.
build a porch or an entryway.
What about ADA?
What?
What about ADA?
Your entryway doesn't have to be elevated, it can be at grade, it just has to be an entryway. Oh, where he says elevated above grade?
Yeah.
Well, you can have a disabled entrance at another location.
No, not if you're building a residential unit, you do not make the front entrance inaccessible.
Okay, so we're gonna say,
Period, the end.
we're gonna say porches or entryways that are covered, period.
Versus your, we're okay with the landscaping stuff, we talked a little bit about that. I don't know,
Yeah, Jeff's gonna look through that and make sure that we make some adjustments. Okay, that's great.
Did anybody have any questions about the landscape? You want to
Now, we're gonna,
just take a moment and let him kind of tell what he did and what he found real quick, that way we can... Do you mind, just so I can get him out of here?
yeah,
Did you want to run through it?
Just briefly explain what you did and what you found.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so I ran through, line by line, just like we did now. The areas that are in green, really simply, these are the... What I did is I took, line by line, to see if we should keep the village code or the town code. For the most part, we would keep the town code, except for when the building's within a certain setback. And then I think the village code, where they have planting units, and some other areas with, that applies to the road frontage, we could use, but other than that, I would use the Amherst Town Code.
So what we'll do is,
He's got his analysis here, we'll provide that to Code Studio to kind of work through and pick up the village stuff and...
circulated to this committee, everybody
Yeah.
got it?
We have it with us, so...
So it'll
Yeah.
come out. All right, good, thanks, Jeff.
All right, thanks, Jeff.
All right, architectural details. Architectural details shall complement and enhance the overall building composition and shall be appropriate to the style and character of the building, the site, and the surroundings. A lack of architectural detail and ornamentation leaves the building devoid of interest, and overabundance of which creates a confusing, jumbled appearance. The use of details shall be kept consistent with the buildings of a similar architectural style, yet should be utilized to supply a unique identity for the structure. For example, window and door trim should call attention to and accentuate openings without dominating or confounding the building facade. What I like best about this paragraph is that somewhere in local law, there's the words jumbled and confounding. So, moving on. The section provides standards for building base and foundations, building glazing, roofs, cornices, and overhangs, doors and entryways, and building materials. Applicants shall utilize treatments of windows, entrances, awnings, storefront, building bases to ensure the structure makes a prominent statement without overpowering the main street corridor, in this case, the primary street corridor. Moving right along. The building base shall be visually highlight the connection between the structure and the site. A formal base shall be distinguished from the upper portions of the structure through a change of materials, color, texture, or projection. Anybody have any issues with that statement? It's a personal pet peeve when people take siding all the way down to the ground, or eaves all the way down to the ground, or brick all the way down to the ground without creating a water table.
It looks like a building's floating, not attached to the ground.
Right, good. The base treatment shall be continuous along the facades facing streets and parking areas. Any issues with that?
I'm fine.
Okay. The building base shall be included on all primary facades and shall complement architectural style of the windows and door fenestrations. Okay. Foundations of masonry block or poured concrete shall not be left exposed and shall be adorned with appropriate finish materials in the character with the structure, base, and vernacular of the region. Yeah, this is a moment. You can do a nice poured foundation base and have it come up and have it look good. You can. I would argue against the block, because a block foundation shouldn't be exposed on main exposed surfaces. Right. So, anybody feel like we have to leave the poured concrete piece in? Okay. I lost that fight in the village.
I mean, could it be poured, like, think about what a poured concrete foundation looks like. I don't think it, is that what we're talking about? Like,
So if you look at the next appropriate image, and when we flip the page and we're talking about windows, and you look at figure 73, there's actually exposed concrete foundation there along, right? I don't think it necessarily looks bad. So, right, yeah.
Do they line
Yeah.
it, do a pattern in there?
Yeah. Perfect. All right. Well, it comes to architecture review, right? Windows, 16G3, windows shall be used to add transparency, interest, rhythm to the building facade. Windows shall be of scale, proportion, and extent appropriate to overall architectural style of the building. Window openings shall be trimmed with the appropriate material, brick, stone, wood-like cementitious board, to provide added definition to overall facades. That's the, if you're just hanging a steel lintel and back of brick, something's gone wrong, right? The traditional look would actually have some kind of lintel or cap, cornice, something along the windows. Yeah, not on Main Street. The rhythm and ratios of solid to voids for building additions expansion shall be similar to those of the region's valued historic forms. It's a kind of a benign statement. At street corners, public spaces, and along pedestrian walks, commercial buildings, storefront, and windows shall wrap the corner to provide enhanced transparency and added architectural interest on the first floor. So, if you're building at the street corner, even though we told you 30% on the side street, you still have to wrap the storefront. You can't just dead end it and then pick up your 30% later. Any issues there?
Well, wrap it how far?
And it just, it doesn't, you're wrapping it, you've got to pick up 30%, your building has to return it.
you have to have 30% transparency on the ground floor on the side, and it'll tell you have to at least bring the front around onto that.
Yeah, but we don't tell you how far, right? That's ultimately,
One panel, 5 panels, or 5 panels and 1 panel down here further.
go to your architecture board. Yep, okay. Well, I think you have to leave a little bit of discretion too, otherwise this stuff doesn't work.
And it's, you know, and you've got problems, tenant spaces,
Yes.
where you put windows, how they go around corners.
Ellen? Sure.
Okay. The picture above, then, 73 isn't wrapped. That looks nice.
73 is not wrapped.
I guess I wouldn't say that it's shall.
Okay.
I would leave it open.
Should we just take that off?
All of these?
No, D.
You could say consideration rather than wrapping it for or something.
Yeah, maybe something like that.
I like that idea,
But I wouldn't make it in every case required.
Somebody walking down the street or...
We can say should.
It doesn't want to fully around the corner by doing that.
It's a better aesthetic most of the time. So if you look at 75, right, which is now talking about roofs and cornices, 75 does not wrap. I would argue that that's less effective.
It doesn't, like what I was saying, it doesn't pull the person around the corner.
So we could, but we'll put should. All right, 112-16G4, roofs, cornices, eaves, and overhangs. Roofs and cornices are crucial components to the building facade. Now, the issue that I'm going to have here is in Williamsville, on Main Street, we weren't looking for pitched roofs. Here we are, so you wouldn't put a cornice, obviously, with a pitched roof, so we're going to have to think about that. Elements that define the roof in the upper quartile of the facade shall incorporate design details that provide an added level of detail and articulation, architectural expression to the building. You can do that with an eave or a soffit on the other side of a gable.
Change the thing to say roofs, cornices, eaves. It says roofs and cornices are critical,
Right.
so you just add in eaves up there.
Okay.
So whichever applies.
The choice of design materials and their scale, height, proportion, mass shall draw from the design cues provided by the historical character of the surrounding area. I think we could probably drop this.
Yeah, because there's nothing really in most of these areas that I would want to have to replicate.
On the cornice lines, for sure.
Yeah.
Roof lines shall be in character with the overall architectural style of buildings of those vernacular to Western New York. For example, gable, gambrel, mansard, shed, and hip roofs are common within the region. It pretty much covers the slate of what we're going to have here.
We might have flat roofs.
We could have flat.
Then, if you got a flat roof, you're going to get the cornice.
So, we could take this line out, roof lines, we could, to continue to jump.
I would just get rid of it.
Okay, cornices shall be used to differentiate and enhance the vertical compensation of a building with a flat roof.
Yeah. Something needs to happen up there.
Right, so what happens is, years ago, everybody just started doing these little coping strips.
All 3 inches, yeah. That's how the membrane roof went
Right.
on.
So on buildings with flat roofs, right, that'll be where, obviously, that's the spot for cornices. The use of awnings, canopies, recessed entries, and other design elements is encouraged to define the first floor and provide sheltered entryways. I can't tell you to put an awning there, but I can tell you should consider putting an awning there.
Well, the existing code actually requires them.
Okay. Then,
I forgot the percentage, so.
maybe we,
Right, John? Or me? 85?
It's 85%.
Depends, I know we get a lot of variance requests.
I think it's
So we wanna
85%
get
of
variance
windows
requests
and
for awnings.
entryways have to have awnings.
so we're gonna use existing code here.
Yeah.
So you guys are more restrictive than Williamsville. 16G4,
Did you drop B?
what?
Did you drop B on?
We dropped B and C.
Okay.
And then on D, we just simply said for buildings with a flat roof. 112-16G, roofs, cornices, and eaves continued.
Shed roof too.
Overhangs, flat or shed roofs, okay? So it should say flat or shed roofs, yep. Overhangs and canopies should be architecturally consistent with the complementary remainder of the building. Parapets and false roofs shall be utilized to obscure the view of the rooftop mechanical equipment. This is where we jumped the shark a little bit, so we didn't allow for screens, lattice, or fencing to hide mechanical equipment. We said you have to bring a false roof or a parapet up, which is pretty extreme. There are some really nice screening materials out there, but basically what we're after here is you're gonna screen your mechanical equipment
Yeah,
from the...
code currently requires that.
So how do we accomplish that currently in code? We just tell them to screen it?
All mechanical equipment's gotta be screened from ground level at the property line.
Okay. But we don't...
Can't see it how to do it,
We don't tell them to use parapets and false roofs.
No, we just tell them you just can't see it.
I would say if we're going to upgrade our town, we should be asking for best practices. And I believe that higher design standards going forward, including concealment and stealth of wireless, which is going to land on rooftops, we should be asking for more than what we are now.
That's considered mechanical equipment, and it needs to be screened from ground level.
Right, and screen right now is debatable, because they'll say that, you know, the undiscerning eye can't see it. Well, what do you see at ground level? If you're requiring true stealth of mechanical equipment, wireless aside, I think you should be requiring it of all mechanical going forward, so that it creates, you know, you don't see it.
Well, so-
You don't have mixed, you don't have all
Right,
sorts
so-
of things on top of roofs.
So currently, all mechanical is screened. The difference between the town and the village is the town doesn't tell people what you have to use to screen the material. The village says you have to put up a parapet or a fake roof.
And the town tells you where it must be screened from.
Right.
The village doesn't tell you
No, we
that.
don't tell you that. No, again, leave that to interpretation.
I think it lends itself to a cleaner cityscape if you have, if going forward, things are truly concealed,
I don't
and you're quieting down your
I don't-
skyline.
I don't mind in a traditional node that we tell people you have to use parapets and false roofs.
But at the same point, once we get that high, they're going to a gable or some
Probably.
form of roof, which
But if somebody...
may or may not be a full roof.
If somebody puts up a two-story flat roof, you could hypothetically see mechanical equipment from the ground floor.
Not with the current code, you cannot.
Right, but I'm saying, but you could look up and see a metal screen from the ground floor under current.
That would be the screening.
Right, so I'm saying in this case, maybe we ought to, at the notes, tell people you're gonna throw a whole parapet or a false roof at that to hide it.
Yeah, it has to match the material and the design of the building. It has to complement, you shouldn't see it, you're stealthing whatever you're putting up there. And I think that it will retain property value. And the value, people surrounding these buildings will not be, I mean, the front will look nice, and it's most often the burden of the back of the building where the neighbors will see the mechanics. And if you are taking into consideration their property values too and their quality of life, it would be nice for them to just think building and not mechanics. Thanks for dumping that visual on me.
Well, I agree with that concept. I have a question about what that does to the height of the building, where we've put restrictions and have said we'll go to 2.5. What will happen to the 2.5?
If you're going 2.5, you're into a pitch roof. You're hiding your equipment inside of the attic space of the pitch, because there's no way for you to put equipment on top of the pitch
That's
and
true.
conceal it. So if you're going to a two-story flat roof, that's where I'm mostly concerned about it.
Okay, but what about something like, the wireless or the smart stuff, that kind of
Mechanical,
stuff?
any mechanical stuff.
That'll all, but that can't necessarily be in the roof, can it?
Yeah, you could
Okay.
put it inside.
No, I'm just getting back to the whole how and why the town screens it the way it should be screened. As you leave here tonight, if you just think about Town Hall and that giant piece of mechanical equipment on the roof. From Main Street, you can't see it. From Cayuga, we don't meet our own code, but it's in the village, so we don't have to. But, you know, if it was in the town, it would have to be hidden just as much as it is from Main Street as it is from Cayuga.
Okay.
So the wall would have to be high enough to hide whatever's up there.
So I would recommend leaving parapets and false roofs should be utilized to obscure the view of rooftop mechanical equipment.
Should, may.
All mechanical equipment must be screened.
Yes.
Okay. All right,
And I would use the town's current standard
right,
for property like around.
okay. I agree with that. To the extent practicable, building stories, cornice lines, and other horizontal trim lines or infill development shall have continuity with adjacent buildings. We're setting heights for the ground floor, minimum heights for the ground floor. I don't necessarily think that in the town we have to worry about this as much. Yeah, we're not, it's not a big continuity, so I would recommend dropping H. All right, moving on to the next page. All entries shall be designed as important feature visual cue to the building facade. Doorways and entries shall be of scale, proportion, coverage appropriate to overall style of the architecture of the building. Commercial buildings shall have a transparent primary entry, which will be considered as part of the overall transparency requirement for building frontage. So that's something to think about, right? Do we want to require commercial buildings to have to have a transparent door, non-solid door? Do we care if the doors are solid? They still have to maintain their 70% transparency. Do we care if the doors are glass and transparent?
What's the argument? It sounds nice. What's the argument for it? Why was it important to put in the village code?
It was just purely a stylistic issue. What I had a problem with is it would undermine a building like, a lot of the historic buildings, and then the village segregated, it took all the historic buildings and wrapped them up in a nice package and said, you don't have to apply these standards, we're gonna give you your own sets of standards. But it would take buildings like the Starbucks building and make it so that, that famous red door on the front of that building wouldn't work, right? So it became kind of a, hey, do we want this or don't we want this issue? I personally don't see what the big deal is if you're maintaining 70%, if your door's solid, who cares?
I would say as a patron or as a person going in and out of the building, it is nice to see if someone's going to come in and whack you with a door or not, or if it is a little safer too to have some transparency in a building with lots of tenants, et cetera. So I think there are some positive safety issues that could be resolved with that.
I don't disagree with what you're saying, but, think of, I don't know if you've been to Black and Blue. I don't know what they're doing, but it's just thinking about the size of the doors. Just the entry itself, the door being these monolithic 10-foot high double doors are just solid. It gives you a visual clue that this is where the building entry is.
Yeah, I don't know if Adam's Rib has a solid door.
I think they do.
Yeah, it's giving you a sense of seclusion. It's an architectural element that's sending you a visual cue. Scotch and sirloin.
Right, like a bar versus an apartment building. But this is strictly for, this is for entrance to the residences?
No, this is commercial. Just commercial buildings.
Okay. So, I guess I'm mistaking this for the entry that was shown, for the building with Lloyd's Taco, where they had, their entry was also transparent at the corner, correct? And I was thinking that in a massive mixed use, that if you're gonna have a general entrance, but we're not talking about that, you're talking about any door to any commercial going forward, we're not gonna dictate what your door looks like.
Right. Yeah, in this zoning district. Any issues taking it out? Okay. Primary entry yep, go ahead.
I think you could reword it a bit.
Okay.
You could say, commercial buildings may have, you could give them the option, it may have, as I was saying. Commercial buildings may have transparent doors, or that may be, can be considered as part of the overall transparency requirement.
Well, so that would, what Scott's saying is you'd be able to do that anyways?
And if it was transparent, it would count towards your transparency.
Yeah.
Okay.
But if it doesn't, if it's not transparent, it's not gonna count towards your transparency. So the emphasis, probably most people are gonna say, if I'm putting in a storefront, I'm just gonna use the storefront door, because it's a lot cheaper and it's a lot easier way to get my transparency up. But there may be a case where somebody says, I have a specific business, the door is setting a tone for what happens with the business, and I want a rich, solid look door to it. Irishman has two big wood doors on them, right? They're an Irish pub, they want it to feel like, you move this heavy weighted.
Like a Southwestern cantina or something that would want those big, giant, ornate, solid wood, 8-foot high doors.
It's a threshold.
I understand the option. I'm not saying, I don't...
And it's just wording we wouldn't need if...
So you think just drop C altogether?
Yeah, just drop C. Primary entries D shall be detailed and highlighted through the use of trim moldings, overhangs, and other defining architectural features, such as purpose as primary entrance is evident from the street. Similar treatments are encouraged for all entryways near parking locations. Okay. Building materials. This is where we get into the real fun. Along street frontages. Now, a lot of this, we have controls in already, but we'll walk through this and see if those controls make sense. Along street frontages, all exterior building walls and structures shall be constructed with durable materials such as masonry, stone, metal, brick, and finishing wood. I don't want any EIFS down low, which is that painted styrofoam stuff, right? None of that down low. Changes in building materials shall occur at inside corners. Right, this is one that, actually our consultant pointed out, and this is a big deal. So what happens is, a lot of times you'll see a building where the transition will happen before it reaches an inside corner, and then it looks funny, right? It's like, oh, the stone just stopped, that type of idea. So we want to get to inside corners before we transition. Let's see. Primary facade materials shall be wrapped onto secondary facades for a distance of no less than 10 feet. This is the wrapping the corner that Scott was referencing, in which the architectural consistency with the building fenestration. So,
10 feet may be too much.
That's up to this committee. I would say one panel of storefront is usually 3 feet to 4 feet. 4 feet plus the return on that gets you to 5. 5 or 6 is probably where you have to be.
Yeah, if you're doing something like a fake stone type of thing going on, you're gonna wanna wrap that in probably at least 1 to 2 courses of road course.
Right.
So it looks like the building has that.
You wanna go a few feet in.
Yeah, but not
So,
10, I think, is too...
I'm saying 3 to 5, somewhere in that range.
Yeah, probably.
We want to set a distance, I think, though. I don't think we just want to leave it open. Architecture review. I like the 5, right, which is a whole panel of storefront plus the return and the end, so then you're 5 feet. Well, that's what I'm saying. It's a whole panel of storefront if you're wrapping your storefront.
How about we make a minimum of 3, and let the architectural review committee decide, depending on the panel size, how far they gotta wrap it beyond that.
Wouldn't the length of the wrap depend on how long the side is? 'Cause it would look funny if you have a long side of building and just a little bit sticking out, but it would depend on the proportion.
So I'll tell you, it was, I think we were basically looking at it saying, if we have 50 feet of primary building facade along Main Street, and those buildings were then, going back 25 feet or 50 feet back. We wanted to carry, that first fifth, but I don't know, maybe it was 2 panels of storefront. 1 panel of storefront plus the end is 5 feet. Well, yeah, I mean, this building's an exception here. Cayuga's not a good example because it's historic buildings on the corners.
So if you were redoing the Square building, like Benderson wants to do, and 10 feet would be wrapping around down to Chateau, right? So it's sort of continuing, that's sort of what this is speaking to, those sort of corners that are gonna have a lot of foot traffic?
Yeah, so let's go to the...
10 feet sounds reasonable and something like that, because you're drawing in pedestrians already from around the corner. If it's stopped abruptly, you're losing...
So that wraps about 10 feet. It's a 4.5-foot, 5-foot panel of glass followed by a 3-foot panel, so that's 10 feet. I mean, that feels about right.
That's a glass street. No, if it was not, it was 5 feet. If it was a glass street, it was solid corner, but you might still have penetration in there, 3 feet in, and then you want to wrap.
So, can't we go with a wider range?
I like the 10 too. Go back to the other building across the street. It applies to the first floor. Logren's doesn't wrap, right? It looks goofy from the side. I know, but... Right, but I'm saying, so that's awful.
That's an entrance on the...
It's not even proportionately correct. Oh, man. I'll never look at the building the same way again. Logren's wraps on this face.
Yeah, but that's not 10 feet.
Oh, no, it's 7 or 8. That building material carries 6.5, 7. Well, it does wrap, so it wraps. That's more than 10 feet, though. That's more than 10. Logren's loses it in the middle there where it falls apart. The facade treatment just dies. That's a change on an interior. Yeah, that continues more than 10 feet. I mean, it's not good, but it continues more than 10 feet. All right, we're going with 10. We wore Scott down. Okay, standard masonry block walls are prohibited in any primary facade. Decorative masonry materials such as split-face and textured finish blocks are discouraged, but may be considered acceptable facade material at the discretion of the planning board. Architect, well, yeah, but, okay. Exterior finishing materials for renovations, additions, and rehabilitation shall be consistent with those being retained on existing adjacent traditional structures. If you've got a traditional building and you're renovating it, don't stick up ceramic tile, whatever, on the facade. Okay. The following material systems shall not be utilized finished building or signage exterior, shall not be utilized on finished building or signage exteriors. This is where I get into trouble with the plaster workers union. Direct applied finish systems, DAFs, vertical aluminum or metal siding, vinyl siding, T111 siding, glass block, spandrel glass or glass curtain walls. So spandrel glass is reflective glass, right? Just purely reflective, no visual transmittance in or out. Glass curtain walls are 2 stories. You can, but it would be tough here. I mean, the aluminum or metal siding, I actually would allow for a Lucabond or something, or an Omega Light panel. Sorry, the jargon. It's a metal sandwich panel that, I mean, they're actually quite nice. They're actually what they use as the old Buffalo Savings Bank, the green, that accent material is Lucabond. Well, this is just telling you don't use these materials, right? So then we get into the... Yeah, but it's not siding. Siding's different than metal, than a stained metal panel.
What about, I don't know if this is in the list, but, that faux stone?
Cultured stone?
Something that is clearly not real.
That's like the Damon building or tile?
It looks like faux stuff.
I'm talking actually something that is supposed to look like stone work, but is clearly not. I don't think that's on your list, but, I could imagine that being, deployed, and I would hate to see that.
Well,
Can we?
So like the Walgreens stone's a faux stone,
Yeah. That stone
actually...
And you could punch and it would make a dent, you hit it with something?
No, that's not.
This is real.
That's cultured stone. You're talking about the next stuff. We're gonna get to that in a minute. This is the exterior insulation finish system, or EIFS. Right, so this is where I shape something out of foam and then I paint it.
Yeah, but it can even be like that.
Like a composite material, right, that's not even stone. I'm thinking it's like EDF or something like that. It's, I'm not getting it right, but
You don't want it to look fake.
Yeah, we have
well, some of it is, it can look, it's so thin that, it's not really...
It's a facing material.
Yeah, that's, I think that's more of it. It's like in sheets.
Silicum and stickum stuff.
And that's not acceptable, and I don't know what that's called, but you know when you see it. And it ends up being,
really
you can
bad
see through its
tile that people
repetition, you know that it wasn't laid, you can see the seams of where it's repeating. And I don't know what that's called.
I've seen it.
I know that it has a name, but using like a brick, like a glass-sized brick with the mortar in there.
Yeah, that's right, yeah,
Stone that has the mortar in there, but it's definitely fake.
Yeah, I mean, you'd have to, look at it to know, but it's not plastic, but it's not real either.
That's usually a derivative of EIFS, right? So if I call Drive It, I can get an EIFS product that looks like a brick face.
Yeah.
That's what this is. If they come in big panels or they paint a section.
Yeah.
So,
That's
that kind of
material. That's not permitted.
Exterior insulation finish system, or EIFS, right? So, shall not be utilized as a primary building material, but may be utilized at the discretion of the Architectural Review Board as a decorative complementary material on upper stories. So, if you want to build your cornice detail out of EIFS, because it's really hard to build a cornice detail out of wood, and you want to lay that up out of FIPON or EIFS, which is a styrofoam blown material with a facing on it, night and day. Just go ahead and do it. There's some really great EIFS cornices out there. But if you want to put it in as a building material, forget it, right? We don't want sheets of EIFS or EIFS brick or EIFS stone. What we're looking for is EIFS or FIPON basically used as, you want to recreate dentals out of it, you want to recreate, right, you want,
your corbels and stuff like that. Go ahead. Go crazy. It's like that plastic stuff you find at Home Depot and Walgreens to sit there, put around your dining room.
H is good.
Chair rail.
All right, so we're not touching
Your houses.
we're not touching signage because this is not okay. The one thing I'll add, and I did tell the consultant this, is I do care about the spacing of sign boards. A sign board is like, if you look at back on page 42, figure 79, there's appropriate places to put sign boards on buildings, and I'm a little concerned that we don't do that here. Figure 77 shows a really great signboard, and so sign boards are going to be important to me. Like this idiocy,
Don't switch it?
there's signboards appropriately placed on the right. On the left, there's signs above the signboards. There's two signboards or some kind of sick architectural joke.
You can tell
Um,
people also move the lights with
Well,
it.
it's the electric.
It just baffles me. Okay, lighting, this building's gonna haunt me. Lighting, 161, we have lighting in our existing code. This is probably over and above that lighting. I'm not necessarily, or that is probably over and above what we have in this. But I do wanna run through, I'm not worried about 47, I am worried about page 48, and I just want to run through these to make sure that our current code is going to meet these standards or exceed them. Lighting shall be designed such that poles, fixtures, ornamentation, materials are of pedestrian scale, height, and provide for safe pedestrian experience. That's important to me. Fixture height shall be between 8 and 20 feet in height, with shorter poles along sidewalks, pedestrian zones, and taller poles within parking areas. I want those to come down where you have your sidewalks so that you're bringing the light down further.
Current code, parking lot lighting, et cetera, maximum height for the fixture would be 25 feet from finished grade. When adjacent to a residential district, actually, not within 50 feet of a residential district, they have to be dropped down to 15 feet.
So let's talk about C. Fixture shall be dark sky compliant. Light trespass into adjacent non-commercial areas shall not exceed 0.1 foot candle in intensity. We have 0? Can you really achieve 0? Okay. But we're dark sky compliant?
Yes, they all have to be sealed and nothing can point up.
Great. Amber hue lighting such as high-pressure sodium fixtures?
Not permitted.
Great. Lighting fixtures shall be directed away from adjacent structures and property boundaries.
They have to be.
Fixture mount heighting, direction, and intensity shall be determined on based on minimum requirements.
We have minimum set for parking areas, drive-throughs.
Building
bank
lighting.
things.
Building-mounted lighting shall be of style complementary the architectural character of buildings and surroundings. Building-mounted lighting shall not be utilized as area lighting. Can you use wall packs to light up parking lots and sidewalks?
Well, they'll light a part of it, depends where the parking lot and sidewalk is.
It's not residential. It's commercial, commercial.
Is that what, so we're okay leaving that?
As long as you don't, you meet the minimum and don't exceed the maximum, because the current code actually sets minimum and maximum lighting levels. You know, for walkways, parking lots, at the property line, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay. Building-mounted lighting shall be utilized primarily as safety and security lighting at entryways, utilities, loading areas, and other areas approved by planning board. Standards also apply for lighting. Building-mounted lighting shall not be mounted higher than 15 feet above grade. So do your building lights exceed the 20 feet of your, or 18 feet of your parking lot lights?
We don't have anything for building-mounted lighting.
Wall pack lighting
Put that in.
fixtures shall not be placed on primary facades on Main Street.
Which one are you?
Building. I'm
It should
saying,
be 18 feet.
it should be 18 feet, but it needs to be incorporated.
We don't have anything for the maximum height of building-mounted lighting.
So of all those, E is really the one that we need to add. Wall pack lighting fixtures shall not be placed upon primary facades on Main Street.
I'm assuming you're saying wall packs, the little square lovely things.
They're the up and down lights on faces. So, it was basically a village, we don't want the front of your building to be lighting up Main Street.
Yeah, because what you're using for definitions of wall packs over here are different from what I would consider those to be. I would consider those to be architectural lighting.
It's usually outthrown lighting from a building is a wall pack, right? So we don't want your building throwing light out onto a primary road.
Wouldn't be permitted. You
Okay.
can't exceed .2-foot candles.
Got it. All right, accent lighting. The ones that I'm worried about here, the use of neon accent lighting is not permitted. I've seen really nice neon accent lighting. I don't know that I want it in a traditional node.
Like in Walgreens?
No, nice accent lighting. There is some, but, okay, so we're okay. B stain is part of this idea? Okay.
In this district, yeah.
Building accent lighting shall be discrete in nature and use the same color or lesser intensity than other building-mounted lights.
As a guide, yeah.
Okay. Accent lighting shall focus on highlighting architectural details and elements, so this is where I'm just taking lights, turning them, and shining them back at my building.
Or landscaping.
Okay. We don't need the light gallery, probably. I don't know, I like it, but do we like it? It's pretty simplistic, basically shows like, hey, these rounded cobra heads, some of these other exposures are not what we're looking for.
So you want floodlights?
What? We're okay with shielded, properly aimed PAR floodlights.
As long as they're architecturally nice.
Well,
If I'm using them back like near where I have a receiving bay or something, do I care? Again, they've got to be correct. If we like these lighting standards, I'm perfectly happy to include these. Okay. We're including them.
More information, the better, especially in the most restrictive district.
All right, the last set of stuff we gotta go through for this district. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take this district and we're gonna map it over the other districts and see where we think we need to recommend some other changes. So like the nodes and corridors are gonna be pretty similar. We don't have to necessarily redo everything for every one of these districts, but we do have to get through the seasonal outdoor seating area stuff. Okay. Seasonal outdoor seating. This chapter is designed to permit seasonal outdoor seating in areas where it is appropriate and promote and protect public health, safety, and general welfare. The specific purposes of the legislation are to ensure adequate space for pedestrians on the right-of-way and areas adjacent to outdoor seating, ensure the safety of patrons utilizing outdoor seating, to preserve and enhance the character of neighborhoods, and we'll have to change that from villages, to promote the most desirable use of land. So we required in the village a seasonal outdoor seating permit. I don't know what we would do here.
We don't require that, but what we do require is if they're proposing to have a patio or anything like that, they have to meet certain minimum standards which were established in Part 6 for spacing, refuse, open areas for pedestrians to walk, and they have to be shown on a site plan. So we have something to enforce, so they couldn't throw extra tables out there or...
Would it be easier just to have a separate permit? I guess that's my question.
Well, is that gonna discourage what?
I just want them to basically have it as of right.
Okay.
If you can show you can meet these standards, go for it.
24 outdoor seats were required.
Great, so I don't have to look at this until such time that I see something that's an infraction?
Exactly. If somebody
Okay.
calls and complains to the building department, go out and look.
Got it.
John wanted to say something.
John?
I wanna,
I want a clarification. Are you suggesting that, okay, the ZBA gets asked all the time about temporary use permit, that kind of thing for seating. Just do it ministerially?
This would basically be if somebody's not complying with the town code, the building department has a right to go out there basically and say, here's where you're not in compliance. However, if you it's a hot, warm, sunny day, you've got umbrellas and tables and stuff, you wanna go set them up as long as you stay within the confines of this code. So, while
I'm trying to think, there's, sometimes you're getting, that hamburger joint would be almost, but, we get asked, let's see, if it's permitted, that's different. But there's some places that we've gotten, like, I want a picnic table, I'm in a commercial area, and it's not one of these nodes, but they want to put picnic tables out in the back for the employees. And they have to get a permit. And it just, I think it's a waste of many things. Well,
let's go through what this says,
Let the building commissioner...
and then let some of this stuff be discretionary.
Okay, yeah.
So let's see if we, so basically, I mean, this spells out the exact way to get a permit, so some of the preamble here doesn't matter so much. But, what was required in the village. So then they get into standards for issuance of permit. So we're going to drop down to section 112-16J4 on page 51. Seasonal outdoor seating must either be separated from a public or private area used for parking or movement of automobiles by a buffer of at least 10 feet in width or an appropriate DOT-approved anti-ram vehicle barrier, or located on an elevated platform constructed of concrete, wood, or other sturdy material at least 6 inches in height and equipped with an appropriate barrier. So basically, any issues there?
Well, we have lots of places that I don't think need that already.
We probably do. So this was a village safety issue, right? We didn't want, there was a year where we had 6 vehicles leave Main Street and venture over the pedestrian realm and into buildings and flip upside down in private areas. So suffice to say, we said, okay, we gotta have some standards, which is funny because when you walk through the village, there's outdoor seating everywhere. So the biggest thing there was it's not that hard to get a DOT-approved anti-ram vehicle barrier. A lot of times it's just really a big, heavy potted plant. So we're able to accomplish that using that or using a slight elevation and change.
Well, we have some places along Main Street that the 10 feet and the barrier and everything else would not fit, that have been doing that for quite a while.
Like where?
Well, the Squire Shop,
The Squire Shop was...
the restaurant. There have been tables and chairs out there with other businesses too, on the other side of the street. I mean, I don't know what we want to do, but we need to look at what's already there, and there's not...
So a lot of times what happens is a bar or a restaurant will want to put something in, and if they want to serve alcohol, it has to be in an enclosed area. So they're going to start enclosing them themselves anyways. If they don't do that, and they serve alcohol, then that's a SLA issue.
Places I'm
Yeah.
talking about aren't serving
Okay.
alcohol.
The towns right now, it's a minimum of 5 feet of clear walkway along the curb and leading to the entrance to the establishment shall be free of tables and other impediments, which is implying that there's a raised curb between you and the vehicle use area. Anything beyond 5 feet of it you can use for your outdoor dining. The village is saying 10, which would be very difficult to do anything in the village along Main Street because you only have about 10 feet of sidewalk.
Well, so that's what happens is like, if you look at Sorrentino's, not the prettiest thing in the world, but
Yeah.
Sorrentino's they just make the 10 feet before their railing.
Yeah. But that building's also set back.
But you could use an anti-ram vehicle barrier,
And all
right?
our new buildings are gonna be 0 or 10 feet.
But I'm saying if you want to put a bollard in there that's an anti-ram bollard, you could stick bollards in there and then, so that's what happens.
How does the spot, are those, what those big pots are along Main Street?
They're an anti-ram.
Okay.
What that says is that at the vehicle speed of 30 miles an hour, this pot's gonna break enough of that vehicle intensity to not do major damage beyond it.
It's gonna slow it down.
Williamsville.
Snyder's got a 10-foot separation. Spot Coffee, Panera Panera has an outdoor seating area. They use a metal railing and they use bollards. The new thing over at Sun and Yotality, there's a new patio there, separated from vehicle using concrete pillars and rails. That's the idea, basically.
Yeah.
We just wanna stop cars from hitting people.
Then you got the ones in the middle of in parking lots.
Yeah, we
like
have
in front of
police use
Panera.
water-filled barriers.
Is there gonna be a are you going to require people bringing it up to code, or are we going to, I mean, I think this is really important, so is it something that, this is for new builds, or now everybody in town has to bring it up to code?
Well,
to
in this case, we're talking about the zoning district we're working on.
My thought would be to take what the village has and mix it with what the town currently has, and let the consultant have added.
Yeah.
Because we've got some really good things in ours where the village does too.
So
And neither one of them are even close to the same.
Well, so that maybe the best thing to do, because we could really spin our wheels here tonight, is in the interest of trying to keep the conversation moving, maybe what we do
for them, find out some rules for them.
is you all have the village code, we can get a copy of the town code, but maybe what we do is we have Scott and Brian kind of run through both, pick the components that are important, and co-blend them.
Yeah, we need an accessible way, okay?
Yeah.
We know we need that.
And I want to be able to permit them as a right use.
DOT right away.
And we do want some kind of barrier, I think, ultimately.
Even in the rear? Even for rear patios?
If I got cars near people,
Yeah.
I want to keep people away
So
from
the
cars.
next page gives you that example if you don't have elevation or, I'm sorry, you know.
No, it's okay.
I've worked, and there's standards of things we started doing, like,
Yeah, you could, Bevel Aqua's got this on the back.
for example, if anybody's seen the patios at the Wegmans in Alberta, or the one in Sheridan Drive, those look just like nothing more than the metal aluminum fence. But the supports for those are concrete filled metal pipes.
So it was under construction. Can you, so if you go back to Lloyd Taco and look at what they did, they have concrete pillars, and then they have metal rail, like an aluminum rail, and all they do is they run a piece of aircraft cable basically down the center of that aluminum rail, so holding functions like a net. So if a car were to put themselves into forward instead of reverse and go into that, the planted barriers and metal rails are going to hold it back. It's not an expensive tree. I think what it does is it argues for an edge treatment so that the tables aren't just milling out into nothingness, right? Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's a good barrier.
But is there 10 feet?
No, it's 10 feet or a barrier.
Oh, I thought it was 10 feet.
No.
That's why I was...
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good treatment right there. And I think that's a treatment that a lot of us could live with, right? And those are movable, you can still pick them up.
We cover that for Oktoberfest, we put a tent up.
Actually, so the other place that uses, there's huge pots out in front of the mill and those parking spots. And there's just movable pots, basically. So, all right, so we're gonna try to put out a recommendation for everybody to review at the next meeting. We've gotten through a pretty difficult piece here, right? So we've gone through traditional low-scale nodes. A lot of this is going to map itself over to the traditional corridor. So, right, we're going to change some stuff inevitably. So what I would recommend we're going to try to do here is we're going to let a couple of the I don't remember. I don't have my map in front of me of my timeline here. Do you have the? Thank you. No, the timeline of when we're doing what, when.
Well, we have to...
Yeah, it's not helping. This is what I need. Yeah, so, okay, so a couple things here. Well, Jackie, I think you and I are gonna miss one.
No, there's 4 of us that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so that,
Too many people for
so
the
we have,
13th,
well, we have a conflict on the 13th,
unless we could meet significantly earlier.
unless we can meet earlier.
We would have to do that.
5, so, did everybody get this? Nobody's getting, okay. So the proposed schedule here to kind of keep this thing moving, is next time, February 13th, we would review the traditional corridors and possibly introduce some map changes. That's an important date, so we need to look at that date and try to figure out if we need to move that date or not. I'm conflicted, I won't be here, Jackie won't be here, a couple other people won't be here. The 26th is a working group meeting to review traditional nodes and corridors for the higher densities. This is the 27th, sorry, thank you. The 27th is a day, now, when I say higher densities, there's 2 places where we're recommending higher densities. The Opportunity Zone, which is the Niagara Falls Boulevard, Sheridan, 290 area, we're recommending we set a height of 8. I don't think we're gonna get 8 stories, but set a height higher, height. This is our growth area, Ridge Lee Campus, Boulevard Mall. So we have to talk about what these articulations would look like on a higher set of standards. They might not change a lot, but some of it will change. And then we're going to try to deal with some suburban districts in March on the 6th. So what about, the 13th is a big question right now, I guess. Could people meet if we rescheduled it to 5, or could we do something different day that week?
But based on what you said about the important things we need to do and the fact that we will need to leave, I think we need to move the date.
I think because what we're looking at is the map, and we're looking at the traditional corridors, which are gonna be pretty similar to the node. So I'm not convinced we can't do that at 5. I could also do the 12th or the 14th, I guess.
If we move the date, I would just have to check with the building.
Yeah. Is that the 14th?
Yeah, maybe the 12th?
Every year I've scheduled something on Valentine's Day. Every year. For the past 10 years, I've done that. Kate has a nice Valentine dinner with the kids. So the 12th is a possibility we could check. No, I just, my first love is municipal government.
I'm calling Kate.
She'll tell you she'd probably agree with that statement. Okay. All right. Well, earlier on the 13th, started at 5.
4?
Well, I don't know, I'm trying to be respectful of everybody's work schedule.
I can do 4. I've one vote.
Dale's retired. You okay? Really?
Turns out I had something, but that might just arrive late.
Okay. Kelly, could you do 4 on the 13th?
I would be out of town.
Oh, okay.
But, I can do it.
So you miss that anyway?
Everybody else works for the town, so I said it's okay.
Roundtree. So we're meeting at...
We're gonna try to meet at 4 on the 13th. All right.
That was an easier solution than I thought.
All right, with that, it's gonna look kind of an interesting day. Anybody else have, anything we need to add before I turn it over to the public? John?
question, why did you skip signage?
So the town signage code, so the village is wrestling right now with the new signage code. The signage here is pretty weak. The town's signage code is pretty restrictive right now. I think we'd be better off reviewing that than trying to review this thing tonight. So,
That's something we should look at as part of the, traditional thing, where it doesn't permit, message signs, that type of thing, no pole signs. It encourages projecting signs,
we can
and all that stuff.
we can spend some time later on with that.
I just wondered, because it becomes a...
The whole code is.
It becomes, it's often, there's, every month there's ZBA questions, things, for zoning and variances and what's permitted, and I want to do this, and it'd be nice to, I thought planning, in fact, was going to be working on fixing up some sign stuff.
Our sign is, this is talking to the sign guy.
It's probably the most restrictive sign code in western New York. This is dealing with Aldrich, Santoro signs, all of them. We've probably got the most restrictive sign code there is, currently.
So I think we will probably want to start with that and see if there's anything specific to these areas that we need to take into account. Yeah.
Well, they keep getting requests for additional square footage and,
Time, message center.
Yeah, but
Yes, message center.
they're coming in for a
Supervisor.
variance from them. I mean, I don't think we want to allow Message Center of right to fix the problem. We would rather them have to pursue a variance, which they have the right to pursue, but it's not something that we want to encourage.
Oh, yeah, this is,
Yeah.
You'll be
I
seeing
don't want to
one for-
encourage message center.
You'll be seeing one for the Eggertsville Fire Company, because they're within 500 feet of a residential district.
What?
There's nothing we're doing related to signs right now, to your prior comment that I'm aware of.
Okay, Ellen and I had talked once about some ideas, and we said, you're looking at the sign code, but I don't know what looking at it means,
So-
If it was, it would be in the context of this, so, and we will, it's not that we're not gonna look at it, but clearly if there's things that are coming to you that pose reoccurring problems and issues, let us know what they are, so we can try and address that.
So we've got three last things I guess I want to address. First of all, the town's moving forward with an architecture review board. We're starting to put that into place. It's going to take a little while. We're waiting for Code Studio to come back, review these things, and tell us, here's some suggestions for how that process should work. The second piece of the puzzle is we are going to a term agreement. We're going to have planners on term agreements, so when we need to address something, we can go back and hire planners and say, okay, we have a pre-approved sort of set of hiring criteria with you, so just give me a letter proposal. It's what we do with engineering. It allows it to be more flexible, so we're going to have more planners with better access. And then the last thing, outside agencies. The last piece of the puzzle is we're ultimately under this contract through March, basically, to try to hash out the bulk of these districts. So we want to try to wrap the bulk of these districts in. If we then, as a committee, decide we want to go start to dabble into other portions of the code, I'm willing to do that. I just want to wrap up the consultants here and get NYSER to reimburse us. So, all right, anybody else have anything different? With that, I'm going to open it up for public comment. Don, you're it, if you'd like to speak.
Thank you. Thanks a lot for using the microphones, and I would encourage a couple individuals here that were a little lax at that to do that more often. The people around that little corner were there. So because as I said, this is a public record, I do not know if Coast Studio uses this video or not. It could be a possible value to them to use this because it actually sees your raw comments. Could be valuable to them, so if they could hear them, that would be valuable. I think for posting the notice of this meeting, even though I'm the only person in the public here, at least it was posted in a timely manner this time, thank you, and I think Kim did that, I presume.
There were more people here earlier.
I saw the other two individuals that left early. This is, again, as I see what you did here today, it's pretty much a lot of detail, a lot of going through, looking at very technically intensive information and trying to find out how to adapt what was done in the village and what was been done in the town, and so essentially merge the process into a single package. And I think there may be a space for some things that don't go in either of those categories. And I think you should call those out specifically and make points if there are any, because there may be some things, especially if you're talking about the future. You know, you're talking about growth and unforeseen possibilities here, so you may want to denote those things that go in neither of those categories and specifically. Other than that, I'm not going to keep you, because if I have something to say, I'll say it, but at this point in time, there's not much to say. Thank you very much for letting me talk.
Okay, thank you. All right. With that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. All in favor? All right, thanks, everybody. It's a record tonight.